The death of a child is every parent's worst nightmare. And last year, Charlotte Farewell lost her 10-year-old daughter Sophie to an aggressive form of cancer. Today, for the first time, childhood cancer outcomes will be fully debated in Parliament. Charlotte and Conservative MP Caroline Dinenage are working together for new measures that would change how doctors are trained to spot and treat cancer amongst children and campaign for parents to spot the signs. I'm pleased to be joined by Charlotte, Sophie's mum, and Caroline Dinenage, Conservative MP and former Health Minister. Thank you both for coming in. Charlotte, just tell us what happened to Sophie when she was diagnosed and the timeline of what happened following that diagnosis.
Yep, so she was quite poorly in the sort of July and August of 2020. She was having stomach pains, feeling sick. She was unable to eat until like after lunchtime, and that became much more consistent. She then, I'd obviously gone contacted the GP surgery, and obviously had a number of telephone calls, but we actually did manage to get one appointment face-to-face, because obviously this was all during lockdown. And they did obviously feel her tummy, they felt, and it was a bowel infection, and that hopefully it would get better on its own. Then a few weeks later, she started bleeding. So I phoned back to the surgery and they said it would be her first period. She'd just turned 9. I was insistent that this wasn't. I wanted it recorded that it wasn't. And then after 8 days of bleeding, I took her to A&E, and this was in the 5th of September 2020, and they said how long she had this lump for. And they found a 12-centimetre tumour in her abdomen. So following that, she obviously had surgery, a very long surgery to try and remove the tumour. They weren't sure at that point whether it was benign tumour or cancerous, but after the surgery, the surgeon said this is cancer, and they managed to remove 95% of the tumour, but they couldn't remove it all. Then we went through 9 rounds of chemotherapy, very aggressive chemotherapy, and 7 weeks of radiotherapy throughout that. We managed to get rid of the majority of the cancer. There was only a tiny, tiny bit of residual bit left. She went on maintenance chemo. This was in the end of April last year. And 8 weeks later, she relapsed whilst on maintenance chemo. And we know that relapsing whilst on treatment, is not good. And she had had so many treatments, so much toxicity in her, that we couldn't have the side effects that she was suffering with, meant that we couldn't have the normal relapse treatment. And anything that was offered was about biding us time rather than actually a cure. We know now that those with solid tumours, there's around 8% chance of survival if you relapse. So it's dismal figures that you're working with. So we tried a more of a palliative sort of chemo. We tried to see one that would try and hold it, but sadly it didn't work. It continued to grow at the fast rate that it was going at. So we made the decision to stop any further treatment, because it's not fair to keep giving her drugs that it's not doing anything to her. She set out on completing her bucket list in the July and the August, and she sadly died in the September last year.
Thank you so much for explaining that to us. It must be very difficult, but it's part of the campaign to explain it, so thank you. Caroline, cancer is the biggest cause of death amongst children, and yet, incredibly, today, this will be the first time that the issue has been the subject of a full debate in the House of Commons. That's thanks to you. How come it's taken so long?
I just don't know, Gloria, and we were flabbergasted. I mean, it has been the subject of adjournment debates, at the end of the day, in Westminster Hall debates, but never in the full chamber of the House of Commons that we can find has childhood cancer outcomes been the subject of a main discussion, which is, when you consider how many discussions we've had recently about, parties in Downing Street, and this is something that literally could save lives in the future. So that's why it's so important, and that's why we've had a lot of support from MPs across the House, because this is something that impacts people up and down the country. There are bereaved families that have contacted me from up and down the country, and I'm so pleased that Charlotte brought it to my attention and we can work together to try and do something about it.
And Charlotte, tell me when you decided to reach out to your MP and why you decided to go to your MP, Caroline.
Yeah, so for some people it might be strange, but it was not long after Sophie died. I think it was early October of last year, so she died mid-September. And I was just so determined. I mean, I do not want any mum to have to sit and watch their child die. I can't even begin to describe how horrific that is, and how we have to stop this. This is something that could be treated, and we could have saved her, had more investment and research gone into this. It is the #1 killer, as you said, of children, yet we have 3% of all funding, cancer funding, going to children.
Wow.
No wonder, and that's over 88 different types of children's cancer. No wonder there has been no change in decades for certain type of cancers.
And Caroline, you must remember when you first met Charlotte. Just tell me about that meeting.
Yeah, well, I do remember it very vividly. We met in my office in Gosport, and first of all, we talked about Sophie's remarkable legacy. You know, Charlotte said she had a wish list, a bucket list of things that she wanted to achieve. You know, she wanted all the things we all want, Gloria. She wanted a pair of high heels. She wanted to cook with Gordon Ramsay, and the family set about delivering that for her. But where she was remarkable, Sophie, was that she had also things she wanted to achieve that would improve the experience for others. So she looked around and she saw that the play facilities in the hospital weren't very good, and that the play specialists that they provide weren't there at weekends, and if one of them was off, there was no replacement. And so she really wanted to see better play facilities in hospitals, and she raised £6,000 by herself, direct painting ceramics in hospital, to buy more toys for her hospital. She was amazing. We were sort of inspired by that story of this young lady who, despite her incredible illness and struggles, really wanted to try and change the environment for other people. But then, what really struck me was when Charlotte started talking to me about her own experiences and about how really quite easily we could change the environment as to how we detect and how we treat and how we care for children with cancer, just with a little bit of additional support and backing.
And is that what you're going to be pressing for in this debate today? And because you'll be able to the minister will hear you.
Yeah.
You're looking for answers, and what sort of answers are you looking for today?
So first and foremost, it's quite audacious, but what Charlotte and I are going to be asking for is, or I'm going to be asking for on Charlotte's behalf, is a mission. We want a childhood cancer mission. We saw when we lost our dear colleague Tessa Jowell,
yes,
how there was a brain cancer mission that the government and research and charities and funders and scientists all came together to try and move the dial on brain cancer, and it's worked. It's had very, very strong success, and we'd like to do something similar with childhood cancer. It's about that early detection. It's about parents being equipped with the tools they need to spot the signs and symptoms. It's not about scaremongering, yes, but it is about making sure parents understand that this is the biggest killer of children under the age of 14. It's not as rare as it's portrayed, yeah, but it's also about equipping GPs with the information that they need and the support they need to do that early diagnosis, because we know that with children's cancer more than any other, that early diagnosis is absolutely crucial to finding that cure. But also it's about investing in these treatments and the research, because, as Charlotte said, far, far too little money and effort and time goes into researching children's cancers. It really is the Cinderella of cancer research.
That's a big list, but I think everybody watching will wish you very well in ticking every single one of those off. Your experience has turned you into a campaigner. I was reading that in December you met the Health Secretary. And one of the things that you raised was your experience. Of course, you were with your daughter when she was in hospital. Just talked to us about the lack of support, actually, for parents while you were in hospital with Sophie.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if we only know our experience through COVID. we obviously were in a room on our own, just me and Sophie. I was with her, didn't leave her side from when she was diagnosed, obviously till the very end. The parents aren't fed in hospital. In fact, we've obviously found out that only 15% of hospitals in the country feed parents. That's 1/5.
Really?
That,
So mum's hungry while she's trying to look after her darling daughter.
And I know I had my mum message recently, and she'd been in hospital and hadn't eaten for 5 days because she wasn't able to leave her child. And this is 2022. We are in, we aren't in a country where we can't get access to food. We should be feeding parents. The one parent that stays should be fed. And Sophie used to get really angry about this. I used to feel sorry for the person coming in and giving her food, because she'd be like, "Why are you not feeding my mum? She has no choice to be here, and yet you're not feeding her." And, it's not their fault. This is on a, much bigger level. But it is true. There is either you can't even leave your child, or you have financially, there are parents that can't afford to. There's been a study recently that's been done by the NHS England, and they found that on average, parents are paying £15 a day, one parent, to feed themselves in hospital because of the cost of what it costs in hospital. Which, with the current climate that's going on, there's parents that can't afford to do that. So they're having to make the sacrifice of not eating, and yet they're expected to try and care for their child. Some of these children were not going home well. Like Sophie, I used to be obviously her carer when she would go home. We need to be looking after the parents as well.
Absolutely.
It's really important.
Absolutely. And just finally, I think you're such a powerful campaigner, by the way. I really do. You can't help but be moved by listening to what you have been through. But part of the reason why we do these items is because actually MPs can help. And so we're trying to show that side of an MP's job as well. Sorry. So you have found it useful to reach out to your MP, and it's helped you to get the things.
Yeah, I can't thank Caroline enough. There has been MPs, there are 650 MPs plus that could have changed this, decades ago in my eyes. But Caroline, I took my story to her and said, I asked her to help. And I give her juice. Caroline has been incredible. She is the only MP that has brought this to the House of Commons.
To you. You inspired her to do that.
But she is...
It's wonderful teamwork.
I wouldn't have been able to do this had Caroline not been able to, because I don't know politics enough. I'm a mum. But she has done that. And there are MPs that I will be, cross those that could have attended that don't today. Because in my eyes, every single MP who is able to today should be attending, because this affects children up and down the country. My story is not unique. There are families that have been bereaved, and there are children that have lifelong issues because of the result of their treatment. And this has to start changing.
I hope to meet you again. I hope to follow up with a progress report, and I thank you very, very much indeed for coming in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.